Chapter 3192. Xianzheng knew very well that the most dangerous thing in this place was probably the positions that Becky Lu Lisha had requested. Right now, Xianzheng already regretted standing on Becky Lu Lisha's side. Becky Lu Lisha's mood swings were too hard to please. But Chen Zhao couldn't do anything either. He and Chen Zhao had such a bad relationship. There was almost no chance of reconciliation. Now he couldn't please either side. Becky Lu Lisha looked at everyone, somewhat dissatisfied. Is no one willing to come? No one responded to Becky Lu Lisha's order. Becky Lu Lisha's domineering behavior along the way. The more she forced everyone to obey her, the more uncomfortable it made people feel. That was why everyone was only obeying her on the surface, but disobeying her in secret. No, it had already developed into a blatant confrontation. Then I'll call names, Becky Lu Lisha said indifferently. She scanned everyone present. Becky Lu Lisha pointed out 4 people. However, the 4 of them did not step forward. Lugant Lil Stacy Finnans, are you rejecting my order? I reject such an impolite request, Lugant said. You're saying my order is an impolite request? Xianzheng remained silent, but he glanced at Lugant out of the corner of his eye. Lugant seemed to know something. You think I don't know? This is the abyss of death. This place is specially used to seal something, to seal evil with evil. You asked us to stand in 4 directions, because you want us to sacrifice to the demons of the 4 directions, right? If we have enough magic power, we can barely survive. But if we don't, the demons will devour our life force. When we satisfy the demons' needs, the seal will be undone. As for what is sealed, I'm afraid only you know. Lugant looked at Becky Lu Lisha. Am I right, Becky Lu Lisha? Everyone else was shocked. This was betrayal. They hadn't betrayed Becky Lu Lisha, but Becky Lu Lisha had betrayed them. Everyone stared at Becky Lu Lisha. They needed an explanation. Becky Lu Lisha was also furious. To her, these people had betrayed her. As you said, I only need a little bit of your mana. Your mana can still be recovered. If you can't even satisfy this little bit of mana, then I can only say that I found the wrong person. Becky Lu Lisha was still high and mighty like before. It was as if all of her decisions were natural. And it was this attitude that was the most unbearable. Although they were hired by Becky Lu Lisha, it didn't mean they had to put their lives in her hands. No matter how righteous you are, it doesn't change the fact that you're trying to sacrifice us, Lugant said firmly. Previously, he had wanted to let it go, but now Becky Lu Lisha had set her sights on him. Moreover, it was blatantly sacrificing them. This was intolerable, and Becky Lu Lisha did not show any signs of remorse. Instead, it was as if it was a matter of course. It was as if they were the ones at fault, not her. I told you, I don't like people going against my will. Becky Lu Lisha stared coldly at Lugant and the other 3. You can choose now. Stand on it yourself, or I'll throw your corpses on it. Just as the 2 sides were about to fight, a patch of darkness covered their heads. Chen Zhao's group had arrived. As if they were shopping, they strolled over under the cover of the dark lava. Becky Lu Lisha's expression changed involuntarily. Her subordinates all had different expressions too. Miss Becky Lu Lisha, what a coincidence. What are you doing? Are you having lunch break? Chen Zhao took the initiative to greet her. Why are you here? Becky Lu Lisha treated Chen Zhao as a great enemy. She was very sensitive about Chen Zhao's appearance here. Huh? Do I need your permission to come here? Are you planning to buy this island? Chen Zhao asked still nonchalantly. Chen Zhao strolled casually. The dark lava started sweeping the surrounding dragon blood plants again. Becky Lu Lisha was even more furious at Chen Zhao's underestimation of her. Right now, she was like a volcano that was about to erupt. Mr. Chen, this is the abyss of death. There's probably something sealed here, Old Ink said. We better leave quickly. Really? I love seals. Do you know how to undo them? Old Ink's expression was unnatural. Clearly, he knew how to undo the seal. But he was worried that Chen Zhao would do the same thing as Becky Lu Lisha. Sacrifice their lives to undo the seal. If you know, then you know. If you don't know, then you don't know. Why are you wasting time? I know, but it's a bit troublesome. How troublesome? Old Ink explained the method to undo the seal. It was similar to what Lugant had said earlier. I see. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin. The next moment, He created 3 clones and stood in 3 different directions. Chen Zhao's real body chose one and stood on it. The next moment, large amounts of black gas appeared in all directions. "Oh, you can use clones too," Chen Zhao said, smiling. But the others' expressions were unnatural. "Mr. Chen, be careful. The black gas is evil. It's formed by the unclean aura in this area." Just then, the dark lava above them suddenly wrapped around the black gas, and then merged back into the real body. The black gas kept growing. Every time it was about to condense, the dark lava would swallow it. This went on for a few times. Finally, the ground stopped spewing black gas. Everyone was dumbfounded. They didn't think that the seal of the abyss of death could be undone like this. Just then the ground shook slightly. An opening opened in the middle of the 4 directions, and a stone platform rose up. There was a blue pearl on the platform. It was similar to the red and green pearls on the previous 2 islands. Becky Lu Lisha's eyelids twitched. She didn't think that Chen Zhao could undo the seal so easily. Even if she wanted to be the oriole behind the mantis stalking the cicada, she didn't have enough power. "Is this what you're sealing? How disappointing." Chen Zhao shook his head. "Miss Becky Lu Lisha, it's for you." Becky Lu Lisha looked at Chen Zhao without any joy on her face. She didn't understand what Chen Zhao was planning. "Mr. Chen, I think we had some misunderstandings before. I think we can resolve them and work together again." "Sorry, I'm not interested in working with a poisonous snake. I'd rather work with a demon." Becky Lu Lisha's lips trembled in anger. She finally suppressed her anger. "Fine, but I still hope that we won't be enemies." Chapter 3193. Not enemies. Be it Chen Zhao or Becky Lu Lisha, neither of them could tolerate each other's existence. Once there was enmity, they were definitely enemies. Their personalities were like that. Either they didn't interact with each other, or once they did, they were either friends or enemies. Because they knew that the other wouldn't just let it go. Just like what Becky Lu Lisha said, even she herself did not believe it. How could Chen Zhao believe her? However, Chen Zhao had let Becky Lu Lisha control the island twice in a row. This wasn't courtesy anymore. He was giving her benefits. No one would think that it was because Chen Zhao was a nice guy. Chen Zhao gestured for Becky Lu Lisha to leave. How could Becky Lu Lisha communicate with the blue pearl in front of Chen Zhao with peace of mind? She would feel uncomfortable if Chen Zhao was around for a second. Looks like Miss Becky Lu Lisha can't even eat with me here. Let's go." "Mr. Chen, is it convenient for us to go with you?" Lugant asked. "If you want to leave, I can help. But if you want to go with me..." "Sorry, I don't like to go with strangers." Chen Zhao had seen Lugant's group and Becky Lu Lisha's argument, and tit for tat. However, he couldn't guarantee that it was just a 2-man show between Becky Lu Lisha and the others. If he brought a group of people he didn't trust, Chen Zhao wouldn't be able to resist killing them. For everyone's convenience, Chen Zhao didn't mind opening the door for them. But if they followed him, then forget it. After all, they hadn't chosen a path in the beginning. No one would accept changing their path halfway. Lugant and the others were somewhat disappointed. But Chen Zhao's answer was expected. Chen Zhao came and left in a hurry. It was as if he had specially come to help Becky Lu Lisha solve her problem. Lugant and the others also left with Chen Zhao. It wasn't just the 4 people that Becky Lu Lisha had pointed out earlier who left with Chen Zhao. Apart from Xianzheng, everyone else had left. "Mr. Chen, do you know how to leave here?" Lugant asked. Chen Zhao looked at everyone, and then silently grabbed at the air. There was clearly nothing, but it felt very strong. Chen Zhao slowly separated his hands, and a spatial crack appeared before everyone. Everyone gasped. Many of them had seen teleportation magic before. However, forcibly tearing space apart was unheard of. "This is the way back," Chen Zhao said, pointing at the spatial rift. Where does this lead to?" Everyone had a look of disbelief on their faces. "I don't know. In any case, it leads to a certain corner of Earth. Transportation is so convenient now," Chen Zhao said casually. "Find a bus and go home. Hurry up. This spatial rift won't last for more than a few minutes." "Mr. Chen, my strength might not be worth mentioning in your eyes, but my magic is quite useful. Why don't you let me stay by your side and help you?" Lugant said, unwilling to give up. He turned around and grabbed the snake's head, smashing it with his fists. The snake head tore off a large piece of flesh from Gaia's waist before shrinking back into the sea. Gaia looked at the sea in shock and anger. Damn, why did he come out? Why did he come out? Goddess Gaia's huge body was blasted away and smashed into the sea dozens of kilometers away. Goddess Gaia's body was so huge that when she collapsed, it set off a monstrous wave. At that moment, the chaos python opened its mouth and tried to envelop Chen Zhao and the others. Chen Zhao's dark lava immediately pulled everyone back, pulling them out of the python's mouth. However, the chaos python's target was not Chen Zhao's group. It was Becky Lulisha and the twin creatures. The next moment, Jormungandr was completely resurrected. Black clouds filled the sky and electric snakes surged. Jormungandr flipped in the lightning. I have reappeared in the world. Now no one can stop me anymore. Everyone felt that it was the end of the world before them. Just then, Goddess Gaia suddenly pounced at Jormungandr. She was tens of thousands of meters tall, and was not inferior to Jormungandr at all. Everyone watched the battle between Jormungandr and Goddess Gaia from afar. They were so shocked that they could not close their mouths. They fought fiercely. Storms, lightning, flames, and hailstones continuously ravaged the nearby sea and the island that Chen Zhao and the others were on. It seemed that Goddess Gaia had the upper hand. Jormungandr wrapped around Goddess Gaia, but Goddess Gaia grabbed Jormungandr's head and kept punching him with her huge fists. Jormungandr could not fight back at all. Looks like Goddess Gaia is stronger, Gaia said. Jormungandr is going to lose. Everyone else had similar opinions, but Chen Zhao was not so optimistic. Chen, don't you think so? The loser will be Goddess Gaia, Chen Zhao said. Why? Don't you think the situation is clear now? Goddess Gaia seems to have the upper hand, but she's in the sea now. She's lost her source of power, Chen Zhao said. What a pitiful deity. She actually lost her source of power in her own world. As soon as Chen Zhao finished speaking, Jormungandr, who was being beaten back, suddenly bit Goddess Gaia's neck and tore off a large piece of flesh. Goddess Gaia staggered back and fell into the sea. She covered her neck in shock. Jormungandr did not chase after her. Instead, he ate with big mouthfuls, enjoying the delicious source of power. In Jormungandr's eyes, Goddess Gaia was the most delicious food. As long as he completely devoured Goddess Gaia, this world would be completely under his control. He would no longer be able to stop her. Everyone turned pale with fright and looked at this scene in disbelief. This was only the beginning of Goddess Gaia's defeat. After Jormungandr devoured that piece of flesh, Goddess Gaia had yet to recover. The injury to her neck was too great. Even she could not bear it. This time, Jormungandr wrapped around Goddess Gaia's body and neck effortlessly. Jormungandr's power increased greatly, while Goddess Gaia weakened greatly. This time, Goddess Gaia could not break free from Jormungandr's restraints at all. Jormungandr tore off another piece of flesh from Goddess Gaia's body. At this moment, a green blob emerged from the torn wound on Goddess Gaia's chest and separated from her body. Jormungandr opened his mouth to swallow the green ball. But the next moment, an even faster black shadow flashed by and covered the green ball before Jormungandr could swallow it. Chen Zhao quickly retracted the dark lava and reached out to grab the thing in the green ball. A green key appeared in Chen Zhao's palm. Everyone paled in fear. No one thought that Chen Zhao would not keep a low profile at a time like this. He would even snatch food from Jormungandr's mouth. Chen Zhao did not care about Jormungandr and the others' gazes at all. The green key in his hand was merging with Chen Zhao. Chapter 3201. Does the government allow this magic school to exist? No. I don't know what kind of agreement the school has with the government, but at least the school isn't being obstructed or troubled by the government. West paused and then said, or the school itself is connected to the government. Since he confirmed that there was nothing sinister about the magic school, Chen Zhao relaxed. As for the connection with the government, Chen Zhao didn't care too much. Chen Zhao didn't care too much about this. Being connected to the government made him feel more at ease. After all, The government was synonymous with safety most of the time. After returning home, Chen Zhao prepared gifts for everyone in the house. These gifts were all taken from the treasures of Treasure Island. They were all ordinary items, but they could be sold for a shocking price in an auction house. The next day, when Frigga came to teach little Jerlin and Larissa, Chen Zhao handed Frigga a pendant. Chen Zhao gave Frigga a pendant. "Miss Frigga, this is for you." When Frigga saw the pendant, her eyes flashed with surprise. "Is Jormungandr dead?" "Yes, he is." Frigga didn't ask about the process. This result was a bit surprising, but it was reasonable. After all, everyone knew how powerful this human was. Now only she and Bader were still alive among the Norse gods. Of course, this was referring to people with names. Actually, there were still some Norse gods who weren't that famous. Most of the powerful gods obeyed the rules of the human race. They hid among the humans incognito. Frigga sighed with emotion. Jormungandr was the strongest among the Norse gods. Although he was Loki's child, Jormungandr was far more powerful than Loki. But even Jormungandr couldn't escape from Chen Zhao's clutches in the end. Frigga wasn't sad about this though. After all, even when Jormungandr was alive, he didn't have a good relationship with her. After all, Jormungandr was a general in the Dusk camp. But she was the queen of Odin's camp. "Lady Frigga, can I ask you a question?" "What kind?" "Education." "Go ahead." "Diddla wants to go to a magic school to learn magic. What do you think? Should I agree to her request?" "Why are you hesitating?" Frigga asked. "If it's just for magic knowledge," Chen Zhao said, "I can provide much more than the school. But what the school can provide is far more than just magic knowledge. Magic requires communication," Frigg said. "Under the same conditions, the one who communicates is destined to have an easier time learning magic than the one who imparts magic knowledge privately. In other words, you approve of her enrollment." "Of course, it's not just her. I think the future Jerlin and Larissa should also go to that school." Chen Zhao chuckled. "I thought you would say that the knowledge taught in mortal schools is definitely not as good as your magic knowledge. This depends on the upper limit of Didi's talent. First of all, the raw materials needed to make the potion would cost millions. This meant that any one of their research department's research would cost millions. This meant that even Chen Zhao might not be able to afford such an expensive company. The most important thing was, so what if they managed to figure it out? There were already such alchemy potions in the spiritual world. This company was researching other people's products that were already mature. At this time, their alchemy would definitely not be able to compete with other people's products. Unless Stephen wanted to reduce the cost and price of the potion to a few $1,000s. But was that possible? Perhaps they are looking for a spiritualist with powerful regeneration abilities, such as this. With that, Chen Zhao cut his finger. The wound on his finger healed at a visible speed. Stephen slumped onto the sofa. He couldn't accept the fact that he had invested all his fortune into a group of swindlers. One had to know that Stephen was an investment expert himself. Back then, Stephen had even helped Chen Zhao deal with some financial problems. Now Chen Zhao couldn't just ignore Stephen's situation. "Let's go. Take me to see those swindlers. Let's see how much we can recover." "No, we're not calling the police." Stephen asked, stunned. "How much do you think the police can help you recover? Or can the police handle spiritualists? Can you? Let magic solve magic's problems." Chen Zhao also called West and asked him to gather the members who weren't on missions. From Stephen's description, the company had quite a lot of people. If Chen Zhao was alone, there would inevitably be some who slipped through the net. He had to catch them all at once. A group of people arrived in Las Vegas in a grandiose manner. Stephen's face was filled with worry. After all, he had gambled almost all of his fortune on this operation. He had considered many solutions. Calling the police was one. Or he could have a showdown and negotiate with them. If he couldn't get the money back, he would basically have to file for bankruptcy. Or he could borrow more money from Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao couldn't guarantee anything. After all, the money was in the bank. He didn't know how many accounts it had been split into. If he wanted to recover the money, he could only arrest all the people involved in the scam. Stephen gave Chen Zhao a list of everyone he knew. Then Chen Zhao would arrange the arrests. Under the night sky, Chen Zhao and Stephen arrived before a villa. Mr. Allor, where are you now? Mr. Stephen, what's up? I'm here to talk about the follow-up investment. Oh, I see. I'm at home. Do you want to come? Or we can talk at the company tomorrow. I'm at your door, Stephen said. Just then, the door to the villa opened. Chen Zhao and Stephen walked in. They saw Allor in the living room. Chen Zhao glanced at Allor. He looked like an elite in the workplace. Even though he was wearing casual clothes at home, he still gave off a decent vibe. Mr. Stephen, who's this? My friend, Stephen said. You can call him Chen. Oh, he's in the same industry as you. Hello, Mr. Chen. Allor was surprised, but he was still calm. He shook Chen Zhao's hand. Mr. Stephen, what do you want to talk about this time? I want to divest, Stephen said. Divest? Why? Allor looked at Chen Zhao from the corner of his eyes. Since he was in the same trade as him, did he hear any bad news from him? I missed the market. Anyway, I want to get my money back, not a single cent less. Mr. Stephen, the money you invested has been converted into research in the laboratory. I'm afraid you won't be able to get the money back. However, you can try to sell the shares in your hands. Although you are not optimistic about it, I believe that our company's future is still very popular. Mr. Allor, I'm afraid you've misunderstood me. Not only do I want to sell my shares, but I also want to get back all the money I invested. Even if Stephen had evidence, he couldn't force Chen Zhao to act. But from the moment Allor made his move, the situation changed completely. It turned into a psychic attacking and deliberately murdering an investor. Chen Zhao took out his phone and called West. You can do it now. West and most of the supernatural organization members were in Las Vegas. They were stationed near most of the employees' residences and outside the fraud company. Allor tried to attack Chen Zhao and take his phone. But Chen Zhao only pointed and Allor was pressed against the wall by an invisible force. Stephen calmed down. It seemed that finding Chen Zhao was a wise choice. Allor was a druid. He tried to transform into a beast. But even so, he couldn't break free from Chen Zhao's control. At first, Stephen was worried that Allor would break free. But gradually, he realized that Allor was just putting on a one-man show. He kept tossing and turning. But in the end, he was still hanging in midair. Go and see if you can find any evidence or other hidden bank accounts. Stephen nodded and quickly went to rummage through the cabinets. At the same time, he took Allor's phone and computer with him. Allor, his employees, and even his partners, none of them escaped. Of course, some of the employees were innocent. They just treated it as an ordinary job. These people had to be screened. Soon, all of Allor's bank accounts, sub-accounts, and even related accounts were wiped out in one go. But Stephen only got half of his money back. Most of the money had been converted into other properties. Chen Zhao didn't have a good solution either. Modern finance created more opportunities, but it also brought a lot of shadows. Allor used his network to continuously send money in and out, spreading it across the financial network. It was already good enough that he could get back half of his money. Allor also confessed his accomplices. Then, Chen Zhao got back another 100 million for Stephen. This time, Stephen was greatly hurt by the scam. He didn't go bankrupt, but he was still in a lot of debt. Most of it was in the bank. In order to raise money, he'd mortgaged many properties to the bank. Chen Zhao could only lend money to Stephen and have him pay back the money and get the mortgaged assets back first. Stephen had become much more haggard these days. Stephen, did you patch up the hole on your side? I basically did, but my assets have shrunk greatly. Stephen rubbed his forehead. When can Mystical Island open for business? Mystical Island was still under construction, but it had been hyped up by the media. Right now, Mystical Island was very popular. You know my Petamon, right? Yes, that giant killer whale. What's wrong with it? It's been a bit too big recently. I plan to make it public through Mystical Island. Huh? What do you mean? Simply put, I plan to make it the guardian of Mystical Island. Will it affect Mystical Island's brand image? Stephen didn't want to cause any more trouble. After all, he'd already been hurt by the scam. Right now Mystical Island was doing very well. He only hoped to maintain this situation until it officially opened to the public and tourists. Its appearance will shock the world. Are you so sure? Chapter 3204. Very soon, Chen Zhao and Stephen agreed on the specific steps. After seeing Amon's photo, Stephen no longer objected. Amon was a real beast now. In terms of size, he could even be considered legendary. Amon was more than 10,000 meters long. He was like a moving island in the sea. Moreover, Amon also had the ability to fly short distances, like a flying fortress. Everything was normal at home. After Chen Zhao personally inspected the magic high school, he agreed to let Didala go there. Of course, it was summer break now. School hadn't started yet. Didala was working at the brewery now. It wasn't that Chen Zhao didn't give her pocket money. In fact, Didala's pocket money was almost the income of a normal family. But for girls her age, no amount of money was enough. They would never know how to manage their money properly. Of course, Didala was a bit of a spender, but she wouldn't really squander it. Also, after spending all the money, she wouldn't ask Chen Zhao for more. Instead, she went to work at the brewery. Because she was Chen Zhao's child, Denver easily hired Didira. After that, she called Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao didn't ask about it. It was Jerlin's birthday at the beginning of August. To celebrate Jerlin's birthday, the whole family went to the sea. During this time, Stephen's new movie was released. It was a collaboration between him and Drow Grove. The box office was very good. The global box office was over $2.6 billion. Both Drow and Stephen had benefited greatly from it. Especially Drow Grove. He had invested in the movie. Although it wasn't a large portion, it was enough for him to pay off his debts and still have a surplus. He also returned to the ranks of A-list celebrities. Stephen didn't need to say much. Ever since he was tricked last time, he was a bit depressed. It was mainly because he had lost too much money. He couldn't recover from it. Now the movie was released. Although he hadn't gotten his share of the profits yet, he was already synonymous with success. Even his obvious assets were rapidly rising in value. It wasn't enough to make up for his previous losses, but at least he wasn't as nervous as before. Stephen's gloominess was swept away. Instead, he was in high spirits. Chen, come here. I have something for you. Stephen called Chen Zhao. His movie was a huge success. Of course, he would not forget Chen Zhao's help. Chen Zhao arrived at Stephen's studio. He saw a bright red and yellow off-road vehicle parked at the entrance. It was twice the height of a normal sedan. Even though Chen Zhao wasn't a car enthusiast, he was still attracted by the off-road vehicle. Stephen walked out of the studio to welcome him. Chen, what do you think about this car? Pretty good. Then it's yours. Are you sure this big guy can get on the road? Of course. All the paperwork has been done. Stephen patted the car. Chen Zhao didn't reject the Jeep. This off-road vehicle was not produced by a well-known company. It was the product of a small workshop. Don't look down on small workshops. In fact, there were more than 3,000 small workshops in the United States. It was similar to privately modified cars, but it was much more high-end than privately modified cars. They have the technology, the ability, and the ideas. Moreover, they are licensed to produce cars. In other words, their product was not a toy, but a vehicle that could really go on the highway. This kind of small workshop only served private people. They did not display the finished product. They would only design and produce according to the customer's needs, from the parts to the engine. If the customer asked for a rocket engine, they could put it on. Of course, this kind of car clearly could not go on the highway. The technology of these small workshops was not as good as those big brands. In fact, these small workshops all had their own designers and engineers. Some big brands would even seek cooperation from these small workshops and buy the license for the car models. They would even seek joint designs. This was also proof of the American car industry's development. However, the lowest order for such private customization was at least $1 million. They would not even care for a few $100,000. As long as you could think of a request, they could almost satisfy it. Therefore, there were many private customization services that could produce cars worth tens of millions. For example, the car that Stephen had given Chen Zhao was at least $5 million. Take me for a ride, Stephen said. Chen Zhao did not reject. Driving an off-road vehicle and a sports car were two completely different feelings. The vibration from the engine could not be felt in a sports car. On the road, it was like a monster. The scariest thing was the car's whistle. Because it was specially made, it could produce 120 decibels of noise. If Chen Zhao honked at a traffic light, he could shatter the windshields of the cars ahead. Chen, are there no reliable investments in the spiritual world? Stephen asked in the car. Why do you have to invest in the spiritual world? Why don't you invest in something you're good at? You think I don't want to? But even in my area, there are not many projects that I can invest in. There are even fewer projects that can generate profits. In this era, entrepreneurs and investors only want the first wave of dividends, not long-term ones, Stephen said helplessly. This has caused the investment environment to deteriorate. It's too difficult to find a good project, and my money is lying in my bank account, devaluing and losing money every second. Chen Zhao pursed his lips. He had 100 times more cash than Stephen. According to Stephen, he would lose 100 times more. But these were two different ways of thinking. Chen Zhao was a typical local tycoon. All he could see was money. Chapter 3205. Actually, Stephen also wanted to find out more. Unfortunately, things didn't go as he wished. The supernatural organization couldn't bring him any substantial benefits. Why do you have to set your sights on the spiritual world? Do you know what the spiritual world is? Of course I do. I know it better than you, Chen Zhao said, rolling his eyes. No, you don't. You don't even know what it is, Stephen said. Right now, in the financial world and the investment world, the spiritual world is a brand new resource. It's a completely undeveloped industry, with a variety of possibilities and unlimited benefits. All the rich people are raising funds and looking for possible projects to invest in the spiritual world. You know, there are many people who have been tricked like me. It's a pity that they don't have a friend like you. When Stephen said that, there was a tinge of relief in his voice. Chen Zhao rubbed his forehead. Stephen, you're a director. No, I'm not just a director, Stephen said. I'll only be on the set for less than a month every 2 years. I'm a businessman the rest of the time. If people knew that the world's top director said he was more of a businessman than a director, the world would probably explode. Since you know that there are many scammers in the spiritual world, and you've experienced it yourself, haven't you learned your lesson? Chen, I know you're looking out for me, but I can't give up. This is a huge, unprecedented cake. No capitalist will let go of this chance, Stephen said. Chen, you can't miss it either. I'm rich, but I'm not a capitalist. Chen Zhao shook his head, smiling. Stephen didn't argue with Chen Zhao. Chen, help me think what projects I can invest in. Chen Zhao felt that Stephen was a bit too obsessed, but Chen Zhao couldn't persuade Stephen. He was determined to invest in projects in the spiritual world. Nevertheless, Chen Zhao still helped Stephen think. How is it? Have you thought of one? Chen Zhao rubbed his chin and didn't speak for a long time. After a while he looked at Stephen. Stephen also remained silent, waiting for Chen Zhao's reply. After a few minutes, Chen Zhao said, What do you think about a spiritual world competition, like the NBC Sports Network or the MLB Network? Stephen was surprised. Are there no competitions in the spiritual world? Yes, but there are almost no professional competitions. For example, a month ago, there was the World Supernatural Competition in the Bhikkhu Islands. That was already the highest level of competition in the supernatural world. There is no prize money in that kind of competition, only honor. Moreover, the competition is very irregular. If you set up a professional alliance, you may have unexpected gains. Can I? I can give you the contact information of some people. If you have their support, then half the battle is won. Stephen looked at him. Who are they? You can think of it as the leader of the world's most powerful religions. Like the Pope? He's one of them. I'm starting to get interested now. Can you tell me more about it? You don't need to do the best. No, if I'm going to do it, I'll do it at the highest level, Stephen said. You can't. Besides the Pope, there's no one I can't invite. He's one of them, and he's the weakest among the highest. Okay, apart from these people, you just need to do the most professional one. But before that, You better find a professional to plan it. Aren't you one? I can pay you. That car is pretty good, right? I'm in the industry, but not a professional. I can only provide a general direction. If you really want to do this, you need a professional team. Do you understand? To avoid being scammed again, I need you to recommend people. Okay, I'll recommend a few people. At the end of August, Chen Zhao brought Didi to San Francisco Magic High. When Chen Zhao and Didi arrived at the school gate, he realized that there were many more facilities. Chen Zhao had come to inspect it personally before. This was his second time here. There were many people here today. 99% of them were from the spiritual world. Most of them were parents with their children. Even the people from the TV station came over to broadcast it. The Magic High School had only officially opened today. But in fact, starting from May, the Magic High School had already started teaching. There were various registration points in the school. Chen Zhao brought Didi to one of them. After the registration was the interview, not only for the students, but also for the parents. Chen Zhao had to participate too. Chen Zhao and Didi were led into a room. There were 3 interviewers. One was an old man, and the other 2 were a young man and a young woman. However, the 2 young people were quite strong. The old man was even more unfathomable. "Hello, please sit," the young female interviewer said. "Can you introduce yourselves?" Didi was rather confident. He said, "Hello, I'm Didi Chen. This is my adoptive father. I'm 13 this year." "Oh, can you tell us about the magic system you've mastered?" "I currently know a small amount of curse magic, as well as some simple strengthening magic. My main cultivation is nature's spirit," Didira said. The 3 interviewers nodded slightly. Having so many magic systems meant either one's family background or the environment they grew up in. "You know quite a lot. Did your adoptive father teach you this?" "My uncle taught me some too." The 3 interviewers looked at Chen Zhao. "Mr. Chen, you're also from the spiritual world, right?" "Yes, I am." Chen Zhao nodded. The aura of the 3 main examiners was very strong. If it was an ordinary spiritualist, they would probably be suppressed by the aura of the 3 main examiners. Actually, this was also part of the interview. The 3 were somewhat surprised. Chen Zhao was completely unaffected by their auras. "Mr. Chen, what system do you belong to?" "Strengthening," Chen Zhao answered. "What's your main job?" "I work in a supernatural organization and also run my own company." "Then, have you fought with monsters, spirits, magical beasts, and other spiritualists before?" Didi secretly rolled his eyes and looked at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao also looked at Didi helplessly. "I don't have a lot of battle experience," Chen Zhao answered. "I've only sparred with Didi and my kids. I've also helped people get rid of evil spirits before." Chapter 3207. Chen Zhao had already rejected invitations a few times. The main reason was that he didn't have the time. The tour was just for the novelty. Last time, Northern Gravity had invited Chen Zhao to visit their airplane production line. To be honest, he wasn't really interested in this kind of factory. Chen Zhao didn't really feel anything about this tour. Initially, it was just a vacation. It was even worse than traveling. So when Chen Zhao said he would consider it, he actually rejected her. If he had the time, wouldn't it be better to lie at home? Didira's life and studies at school were quite smooth. Chen Zhao had also paid a secret visit to make sure that Didi wasn't lying. In the middle of September, Stephen gave Chen Zhao a call. Their plan to reveal Amon had begun. First, Stephen had to film a documentary to find the giant Pacific beast. The first part of the project was to film and search for the unknown Pacific giant beast. According to the script, they would first find a giant beast wreaking havoc in the Pacific Ocean. This giant beast represented the cruel and bloodthirsty side of the beast. They specifically attacked the blue whale, which symbolized gentleness and peace. In the second episode, the beast would suddenly meet with misfortune. It was attacked and killed by an even bigger and more terrifying being. In the second episode, there will be some blurry images. It was also at this moment that Amon was lured out. Amon would appear as the guardian of the ecosystem. Of course, this was a conclusion that came from the commentator's mouth, and combined with some specious historical information. From the third episode onwards, the main focus of the plot would be to find the guardian of the Pacific. At the end of the third episode, Amon would appear in front of the camera in all aspects for the first time. Then the fourth episode was to track down Amon. Furthermore, there had been direct contact between humans and Amon. This scene would be played by Steven himself. The whole documentary will be presented as a story. The fifth and sixth episodes were about Amon's daily life and his duties. This responsibility was of course fabricated. Amon's nemesis, the king of the sea beasts, the creator of chaos, the sea monster Hydra, also known as Little Nine. There was no other way. To erect a positive image of Amon, there must be a negative image that would cause people to fear. Little Nine was unwilling to pass on this responsibility. After all, with Little Nine's attitude, no one would believe that it was kind. At the end of the seventh episode, Little Nine would also appear in front of the camera with his true form. It will be the supervillain of the documentary. He even hunted down and attacked the film crew. The eighth episode would be about the film crew's escape. At the end of the eighth episode, Amon appeared and rescued the film crew. This would be the highlight of the documentary. The two old enemies finally met. Chapter 3208. The storm today was especially strong. The waves came one after another. The film crew was a little worried. It was such a big storm. What if the boat capsized? However, Chen Zhao and Steven didn't change their minds at all. Even the flight path was on autopilot. Just then, they vaguely saw an island in the storm. Their target seemed to be the island. However, when the film crew got closer, they realized that it wasn't an island. It was a colossus, an unimaginably colossal beast. Everyone couldn't close their mouths in shock. Was that really a living thing? The boat arrived before it. Everyone realized that the boat wasn't even as big as its eye. Everyone held their breath. It was as if they were afraid that their breathing would disturb the beast. Steven and Chen Zhao walked onto the deck. Steven had seen Amon before. He was even quite familiar with Amon. But Amon hadn't been this big back then. Even now, Steven still couldn't believe it. The big guy before them was Amon. They were two different creatures. Is it really Amon? Absolutely. Chen Zhao was also shocked by Amon's size. It seemed like Amon had grown a lot since the last time. Boss, Mr. Chen, our project, is related to this monster? Let's go to the cabin, Steven said. Everyone, Steven said. Everyone went to the meeting room and stared at Chen Zhao and Steven. Steven took out the script he'd written. That's our project this time, Wang Yao said. One person finished reading the script and passed it around in silence. Then the second person finished and fell silent again. The third, the fourth, the fifth, everyone was dumbfounded. Their project was really related to this monster. Also, were you sure this was a documentary? Not a movie? Boss, are you sure everyone will cooperate with us? I'm very sure, Chen Zhao said. Why? Simply put, it's Chen's pet, Steven said. Everyone felt terrible. That terrifying, unheard of beast was Chen Zhao's pet? They felt like their world was collapsing. Did all rich people have such strange hobbies? What about Hydra? It's also my pet. So you don't have to worry about whether they'll cooperate during filming. In fact, they can understand most of your requests. Everyone was still in disbelief. All right, you guys can meet the king of magical beasts now. Not far away, a huge object rose from the sea. It wasn't as big as Amon, but it was still huge. The yacht, which was dozens of meters long, seemed insignificant in front of that thing. It was a pillar with a diameter of 700 to 800 meters. However, when everyone saw the pillar clearly, they realized that it was not a pillar at all, but the neck of a giant python. Just the area above the sea alone was more than 10 kilometers long, snaking towards the yacht. Then the second head popped out of the water, the third, the fourth, all the way to the ninth head. Steven gasped in amazement, while the others were shocked.